2004 through, perhaps 2007, I would see him periodically. In fact, one time I went to lunch with him to introduce him to David Horowitz, of all people, because I thought that what was happening to him and his claims of being under threat, his life being under threat because of radical Islamists, because Little Green Footballs had taken such an admirable tack against radical Islam since 9/11, and I believed him that he was under threat. So I thought that I would put him in contact with as many people as humanly possible. During that period of time, we became rather friendly because neither of us felt necessarily comfortable naturally in Republican quarters, because both of us used to consider ourselves, liberals. And
right.
So he and I would be at these parties, and I would try and explain to him the culture of the right and why these people dress so nicely and why they're so polite and why they don't understand the newfangled rock and roll. And I was as close to him, I think, as anybody could be, given that we were in the same town and we had similar orientations. And I watched, I don't know when it started, in 2008 or something, as he started to devolve. I had witnessed this with Arianna Huffington, coincidentally, when she went from the right to the left, and how overnight the things that she was paying attention to switched, and the people that used to hate her in Brentwood started to like her, and she started to do everything she could to play to what were previously the people that she held, in contempt. So I have a history of watching this happen around me, and I watched it happen, and I stopped reading Little Green Footballs, and every now and then I would see that other websites that I paid attention to, like Hot Air or Ace of Spades, were caught up in battles with Little Green Footballs, and I kind of just shrugged it off, and it's like, I don't know what happened to that guy. But at no point did I think that he would ever take it out on me. And I thought that Hot Air could defend itself, and I thought that Ace of Spades could defend itself. And I always thought, I wonder if I'll ever run into this guy, in a public setting and be able to ask him these questions, in a civil circumstance, because I thought we had a pretty good history.
Right.
But when the Acorn scandal broke, he started to attack me. And he started to attack me on ethics grounds and on racism grounds.
And he attacked you very viciously, may I add. Very viciously.
Oh, I know. I was like, really? And I must say, I honestly did think, in science fiction kind of, because he lived so mysteriously, where he wouldn't tell people where he lived, and he always had this kind of weird vibe to him, like a person that isn't natural to social settings.
And so, I was just gonna ask you that. How did you find Charles in person? Was there always something weird or shady about him?
He just seemed uncomfortable with his fellow human being, and there are people who are shy, and he was around. I thought it was because he was around Republicans and conservatives and was just coming from the other place, and I also thought it was because he had death threats and claimed that he needed security and or, to do things to protect himself, because what he was doing against radical Islamists and exposing jihad and Sharia. And I just chalked up his eccentricities to, him being under constant attack because he was being bold and courageous in the face of the Islamist threat. And I thought he had a naturally shy countenance. That's what I chalked it up to be. Was he awkward? On a 1 to 10 scale, I'd say about a 4 or a 5.
Yeah, because my whole thing with Charles, I always notice, is he gets obsessed with boogeymen. Like, for example, a while back, it was all but insinuated that somehow Ron Paul was the head of some new Fourth Reich, and somehow all these groups of Lams Milan tobacco companies were all interconnected into massive plot to cover global warming.
Yeah. What I did start to notice in 2008 was this weird obsession on intelligent design. and I just I think he knows this about me, is that I'm agnostic, and I'm not that religious, obviously, if I'm agnostic, and that I'm basically a secular Jew from the west side of LA who just can't stand the radical left and
right.
radical Islamists, and that's it. I'm not that political. I just can't stand Marxist, the politically correct, multiculturalism. Political correctness was the very reason he was in the trouble that he was with the Islamists, because the Sharia crowd doesn't believe in the rights and free speech of gays and women. They believe in oppressing them, but they demand in our culture the same rights that they deprive others in their religion. And I found that CARE, which had targeted little green footballs, was using the politically correct cultural Marxist, playbook in order to try and silence him. And so to watch Charles now do a 180 and now use the same exact tools that CARE used against him, trying to make him out to be a racist. I think they even condemned Little Green Footballs as a hate site. And so when he's been the object of taking his scrutiny of radical Islam and trying to frame him as a racist and to frame him as a hater, which the left media and the left blogosphere granted that assessment, for him to use that against a former ally who was defending him under those circumstances, for him to use the same exact tactics of guilt by association when I repudiate racism, sexism, he tries to use comments in my unmoderated comment section which could or could not have been planted by his own commenters, and to try and imply that I'm a racist when I boldly disagree with the sentiment therein. There are thousands of opinions in my comment section, comments that disagree with one another. For him to take things that exist in my comment section to make it appear as if those people are my fans or that they reflect my point of view when I make blanket statements condemning racism shows how disingenuous this fuckface is.
No, and Andrew, here's the whole thing. I have a feeling it was Charles' minions who planted those comments. But let me tell you why. There's one person who was one of his lieutenants over there by the name of Kilgore Trout. And 2 years back, he went on hot air and started planting the N-word. And what's funny, and he got busted for that. But what's funny is this one guy, Kilgore Trout, always goes to all these websites, all these conservative websites, and he mysteriously finds racist comments. Well, he keeps finding them. What's my conclusion? He's probably planting them, and that's what probably happened. Charles sent his minions over there, and they planted Daily now.
Well, look, I can't prove that one way or the other,
right?
But he can't prove who those people are, and there is an obvious interest of people on the left to negate any thought of a person on the right by calling them a racist. I can prove that because Charles was the subject of those attacks for years when Little Green Footballs was Little Green Footballs up until about 2008. So he understands that perfectly. And so there was an attempt to frame the Tea Party as racist, so a group desirous of being able to get video that affirmed that point of view created an organization, I think it was called infiltratetheteaparty.org, or a verb like infiltrate. And they would go and dress up like Nazis at tea parties and then take pictures of themselves and put it up on the internet. That was because they couldn't find the evidence they were looking for, so they had to manufacture it. And so if you're a left-winger over at Media Matters, if you're just a left-winger in general, and we want to talk about Obamacare and say we don't like it, it has a redistributive engine underneath it, robbing from the rich to give to the poor, it's just pure Marxism through and through. The only thing that they can throw out is the racism thing. So when they have an army of people online who are motivated to fight, MoveOn.org, Huffington Post commenters like crazy, they have a compelling interest to go into conservative sites to make conservatives look as bad as humanly possible. And so I would never go over to a left-of-center site and say, all of their people are saying this, therefore the person who runs the site is racist. It's very, very bad and desperate and illogical, but it just shows how desperate this guy is I don't even know what his goals are, to be honest with you. I don't know. I mean, I honestly consider myself a peripheral person in this battle, but when I started to see what he was doing and the tactics he was using, I thought that I'd transfer my obsession from Eric Bullard at Media Matters, who started to bore me, over to Little Green Footballs, because I thought I could perhaps draw in some of you guys to start paying attention to expose how duplicitous this guy is and how he's obsessed with me. Yet from the very beginning I said, if you have a problem with me, I'm willing to debate you on my tactics, my ethics, my history. And then he says, I'm not going to grant you the respect that warrants because you're so low. I mean, what a chicken shit. He spends hours and hours and hours and post after post after post obsessing on me. Yet, like Eric Bullard, neither of them or anyone on the left is willing to go on talk radio, is willing to go on a college campus, is willing to go on a podium and to go mano a mano and debate on the points. And you bring your proof that I showed Ann Coulter, Anthony Weiner's, cockpit.
Well, Andrew, here's the whole thing with Charles, okay? He's nobody to speak because on a daily basis, and if anybody, and I'm sure you've glanced through the Diary of Dallas, on a daily basis, there are very hateful comments on his own blog. So it's kind of like the pot calling the kettle black. So he'll accuse you of stuff he's doing. And when you were saying what his goal is, his goal basically is to have another Dan Rather moment. Basically, here's the thing. When he went to the left, he's not accepted by them. They really don't trust him because he was so big pro-Israel that, to join the left, you have to throw Israel under the bus. Charles hasn't thrown Israel under the bus yet. However, he's been attacking, big supporters of Israel. He's been having anti-Israel, on the pages things. He has something on the side where he even has, Islamists on there. I mean, he has Islamists on
so you're saying what he's trying to do is by going after people in the right-wing blogosphere, that this is his way of gaining re-entry into the world that rejected him because he doesn't feel comfortable in the right. But you know what? The right, he got rejected from the money bags over at Little Green Footballs. It is a well-funded organization, and once he was no longer there,